welcome to another episode of Two Jiujiteiras. I'm Babs, and today we have a special co-host, Alex Tabler, returning, and also another returning guest, Madeline Hughes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm excited to. I've heard all about you, Madeline. So I'm super excited to be a part of this.
I have as well. It's nice to meet you, Alex. I was just listening to a little bit of your podcast episode earlier today. So it's really, our work is very aligned. So it's going to be an interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, that's kind of
nerve-wracking.
No nerve-wracking. Just, you guys share the same kind of space and very passionate about what you do. So I just thought it would be awesome because I'll be the person in the corner watching you guys talk to the conversation. And we kind of started last episode that we got together and we had so much to talk to you about the evolution of Jiu-Jitsu and women and all the projects you've been working on. And so how is the club going?
It's amazing. Yeah, we're having our first children's Jiu-Jitsu tournament on Saturday. It's happening actually on PEI in Summerside. So we have, I think, 7 kids that are coming up. They're all like either fresh white belts or one stripe white belts, and it'll be their first competition for all of them. So we're really looking forward to see kind of how they stack up and how they do, and just for them to have that experience. And yeah, it's been really great. Like we're almost 5 months in now, and just to see the growth from everybody over that time, and us included, has been really very rewarding. A lot of work and all of that, but it's been super fun.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear. Yeah, I've been following your posts and your stories, and you have such just like very nice posts and stories. So it's really fun to watch you go on that adventure and seeing it grow.
Yeah, luckily we get a little help with our social media from one of our members, so that we're super lucky that way. Like the community aspect of our gym has just been like blowing my mind all of the time. Like we're having the women that fight open mat on Saturday on the 24th. So it's going to be a full day for us at the gym. So we're really excited to be hosting that event. And it's been amazing to see like some of the parents of the kids and our members of the gym are like, how can we help? What can we do? I had someone pick up a big order from Costco today for our barbecue on Saturday and stuff. So it's just been like super rewarding and fulfilling to see that aspect of it kind of coming together and having everybody pitch in and have sort of a common goal. So yeah, it's been really great.
That's awesome. That's so cool. So, yeah. Well, I guess we'll dive into what you do. So I mean, when you're not running a gym and all the other stuff.
Yeah. It was funny. Last night, Tyler was working, my partner in the gym, and in life, it was working a little bit late. And so he wasn't at the kids class. And I think it was probably the first one that he wasn't with me teaching the kids class. And they were all like, where's Tyler? Where's Tyler? And I was like, oh, he's at work. And they were like, you guys have other jobs? And we're like, yes, we have other jobs. Like, it's so funny from the kids' perspective when they just think the context in which they know you is your only context. So it was funny to see. Yeah. So then they were sort of asking me about what I do. And I was like, this isn't really easy to explain to kids very well, but some of them kind of got a little bit of a handle on it. But yeah, I have sort of a diverse background, but a lot of common themes. I worked as a registered nurse for the past 18 years. I studied nursing and worked also in the naturopathic side of things as well. So in early on in my career, I studied a lot of naturopathic modalities and therapies. I started with allergy elimination treatments that I studied in California. I worked in the clinic for a few years doing those. During that time, I got my acupuncture license. I studied traditional Chinese medicine and then started going through my levels of Reiki and got certified and right up through to like master teacher. So I'm a Reiki teacher as well. And then worked at the university for the past 12 years, I guess, teaching in maternity and pediatrics in the classroom as well as in the clinical setting. So I'd have the students when they were in the hospital setting and actually learning to care for patients and things like that. And then just in the past year and a half ago, I guess, I was really looking to change things up and go back into that sort of more esoteric sort of side of things and the healing modalities, and spinal energetics kind of came into my path. And as soon as I saw it and started to learn about this modality, I was like, that is the thing that I have to do. It sort of takes a lot of the different aspects of my background and puts it together and really lets you practice in a way that's like very specific to you and your sort of areas that you've studied, and your, it's like an art kind of that you bring forward. So that's been really neat. I've been learning and started my own business offering spinal energetic and energy work treatments there, Jaya Wellness. So that was like a year ago in January. So like almost a year and a half old now. So, and then again, opened the gym just in January of this past year, and still looking at some ways in which we can sort of blend the two worlds together, because there's actually a lot more in common than you would think, really, from looking at either of them like individually. So it's all about like personal growth and development. And it's interesting, Alex, that you are a breathwork practitioner, because I've been helping to hold space and to facilitate some breathwork sessions actually, and we hold them at the gym. So it's really funny. So we've done that a couple of times now, where people come and they go through like the 9D breathwork sessions, and then another practitioner and I will just help and hold space and support people through that process. So I've done quite a few breathwork journeys myself, and I'm very interested in that modality as well. And yeah, they certainly pair well together. Like breathwork is a very transformative modality, and yeah, it's really incredible.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it was amazing to hear about like how much you know in so many different areas. And so, and I loved hearing you talk about how you feel that they all go together with the jiu-jitsu piece. And
yeah,
I agree, like in terms of there's many things, but I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Sure. Well, in my practice in nursing, like I always was specializing in pediatrics, and then moved into obstetrics. So mother baby care. I worked labor and birth for quite a few years, and then with teaching as well. And then it ended up like a big part of my jiu-jitsu practice is teaching now. So and it's a lot of our major population at the gym is children thus far. So it's like those kind of things all come together, and the aspects of jiu-jitsu that we talked a lot about in our previous podcast, where we're using jiu-jitsu as a tool for personal development. And that's exactly what energy work is, the basis is as well. And so the premise of Jaya, actually the name of my business, Jaya, it means congruent. So it means like really taking personal responsibility for your own healing, your own path, being responsible for your actions, your thoughts, everything that you're doing, and like putting an effort into like personal development. So that's what that actually means. And I feel like jiu-jitsu is such a good vehicle for that as well. And I have quite a few people that see me through Jaya for spinal energetic sessions, which has been interesting too, because I'm sort of leaning more into getting into the performance aspect of it, because it is a physical modality as well. It does help to align the body physically as well, not only just with your emotional and any stored traumas and things like that happen, but it really does help keep you physically healthy as well. So it's been really interesting to kind of pair those two things together.
So cool.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously after meeting you and being able to like, interview you, and then having that opportunity that you were able to do the session for me, and a follow-up session, it was, I wasn't sure what to expect, because this has kind of been a whole new world. Same thing with Alex, convinced me to do breath work. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm getting into, but I really, really appreciate the difference and the shift since I've started, and being more aware, just like you said, that kind of taking ownership of your healing, taking ownership of like your goal setting and kind of where you want to see yourself. And it's been a huge, huge shift of like, anytime I'm feeling these emotions, like one of the things that you both gave me was that stop and pause. Am I feeling crappy because I need to do something, or am I just feeling crappy because I'm just feeling crappy, and like it will pass and I can give myself space, and and then I will come out the other side, or it's a call to action and I need to actually do something.
Yeah.
So instead of being victimized or the world's against me, or just like wallowing in that kind of like spiraling out of control like we do when we have trauma, it's really helped kind of like build clarity and start feeling more comfortable in my skin. So thank you both.
You're welcome. It's all you. I mean, as facilitators and energy workers, in whichever modality you do, it's really not you that's doing anything. It's like your ability to hold space for the client, and to give them a sense of safety and security, and that they can do their own work themselves. So that's really what our specialty is. And there's lots of different modalities and different ways that you can kind of achieve that. Spinal energetics just happens to be like sort of the best fit for my specific training, my personality, and been for my healing as well. Like once I experienced a session, I was just like, oh my gosh, like how do you do that in any other way? Like it felt like years of therapy, in one session, physically, emotionally, like in every way. So it was something that I knew I had to really learn more about. And I've actually, I'm going to be traveling to Vancouver the first week of June. I'm taking my level 2 spinal energetics training, which kind of all came about kind of quickly, but that's sort of how things work when you work in this realm. So I'm really looking forward to expanding my knowledge and practice, and doing the level 2 and just seeing where it goes from there. Yeah. It's definitely a modality that if you watch videos online, like there's a big following on Instagram and there's a lot. The creator of this modality, Dr. Sarah Jane, she's very, she's sort of brought it to the world by sharing it on Instagram, even though it is something that looks quite weird if you just watch it like out of context of what's actually going on. If you've never experienced a session or understand like what's actually happening in the body, it can look quite strange. And that is kind of off-putting, I find, to a lot of people. However, like a lot of sessions aren't really like that. But it's something that's a little bit difficult to put into words. Like it's not super tangible, but it's like the shifts over time. And like when you talk back with people who've experienced it, how their life changes like over time with the sessions. And one of the most common responses that I would say that I get from my clients is that it tends to create a lot more space between like the stimulus and the response in your nervous system. So like I know I heard you guys talking earlier about like, or actually in your previous podcast too, about the breath work, about how when a lot of people are perpetually in this like flight or fight state in their nervous system, they sort of get stuck there after time. And like, it's all like this perpetuating stress just continues to mount. And like, we sort of forget what it feels like to not be in fight or flight, or not to be in a sympathetic nervous system state. So that's what spinal energetics is really working on. It's like connecting with the nervous system, allowing the nervous system to sort of reset itself, giving it space what it needs at through physical touch, through just energy work, and a lot of just like that support that's provided, and just being able to have the ability to hold space for those big emotions that can come up sometimes during the sessions. But yeah, the creating a little bit more space between stimulus and response within the nervous system so that you have a little bit more time to make different decisions. And I find a lot of times with the sessions as well, that people develop a lot more insight into their behaviors and why they're doing the things they're doing, why they react the way that they do. And that also helps to create more space between that stimulus and response, and just thus like settle down the nervous system overall and create maybe more healthy patterns that aren't as quite as deteriorating to the nervous system as how we kind of are now. And you pair that with lifestyle and all of the pace of life, and how we don't really have as much like switch off time at all. So this is why we're seeing this epidemic of, so many people with mental illness and physical illness, all of these things. And not too many people that you come across and have a conversation with are just, feeling pretty content with their lives. A lot of people are really inundated with high levels of stress and are pretty used to that. So it's been interesting to work with people and see the changes over time, definitely.
I'm one of those people who have seen those videos online, and I've been like, oh my God, that looks amazing. I would love to experience that, and I'd love to learn about it. But you're right. Like when we see it, it's like, okay, so what exactly is happening?
Right. Well, what is actually happening is it's like the body's innate wisdom. So the same intelligence that's in your body that like makes your heart beat, brings your cycle every month, all of these things, lets your hair grow, sleep wake cycles. There's so much stuff that's out of our control. So the body has like a great source of intelligence within itself, and it's geared to heal itself. That's like our thing. If you get a cut, you heal. It's the same thing with the nervous system and with emotions and trauma. You're supposed to, experience a trauma. We're not meant to never experience stress or never experience like negative emotions, any of those things. However, you are supposed to be able to process them in real time, and then switch back to a parasympathetic state, which is where we've kind of gone astray. So what we're actually doing is connecting with the body's energy, the body's intelligence, and allowing it to sort of unravel. It's almost like when you come up against a stressor that's sort of outside your window of tolerance at that time. So whether it's like, a lot of it is pretty common knowledge that a lot of it comes from childhood and then continues to grow as a pattern from there. But when you've come up with something that was sort of outside of what you could tolerate, whether it was just like at a stressful time, the child was tired, whatever, and something happened that they couldn't really handle, and they didn't really have an appropriate witness to that stress, someone to help them to regulate and regulate back to their, natural state, then it kind of gets stored. And it's like the way I kind of see it when I'm working in the energy, it's like a bit of a tangled, like I always think of it as like Griswold's Christmas lights, when he had that big tangled ball of lights and the wires are all crossed and it still works. It'll still light up, but it's very tangled and bunched up and not efficient. So with spinal energetics, you're allowing the body to untangle sort of the wiring. so to speak, of the energy. And it's all working through the spine. So different areas of the spine tend to line up with certain emotional, characteristics that somebody might have. As well as with dealing with the chakras, we're dealing with all of the energetic layers of the body as well. So what we're doing is just connecting there, allowing the body to do what it needs to do to sort of reprogram itself, go back to its natural state. And that's why you'll see sometimes those movements is because the body actually needs to move to be able to unwind through the nervous system. And often you'll see emotions that have been stored and haven't had any space to be expressed will be expressed at that time. And it's interesting because when that's happening, a lot of times like the person isn't really experiencing the emotion, so to speak. It's just like the physical action of it, and they'll often have memories that kind of come up, different things that they can kind of link to and some people really don't connect it at all, but they just feel like that was the most relaxing thing I ever did, or they sort of go into a different like brainwave state and will be just completely relaxed and still the whole time. So like a lot of my clients, I'm not an outwardly expressive person either. So like a lot of my clients don't have a huge amount of like, drastic movements and things like that. I do see that from time to time, but it's not like, that's not the always. Of course, what you're going to see on Instagram is like the little snippets of when there is a huge release or a lot of movement that's happening. But yeah, it's actually like, you can kind of think of it as like trauma leaving the body, like unwinding itself. So where it was stored, and I also describe it as like doing a really deep clean of your closet or of your house, that you never really get to those kind of back corners of things. This allows time and space for the nervous system to really go in and clean out old clutter that doesn't belong there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can say during my sessions, I remember the first one and I didn't know what to expect. So I was just like, okay, this is relaxing, and then I don't remember, I won't do it justice, but I just remember you saying getting to like kind of where my shoulders were, like along the chest area on my back, and saying that I was disconnected, like my head and my heart was disconnected. And for no reason, I just felt like I got punched in the chest, and I just, this overwhelming emotion. And you remember I just started crying and I couldn't stop crying. And I'm like, what the hell? Like it came from nowheres, right? So but I remember the second round, it was a little bit quieter, but I remember the movement of my hands. Like I needed to do something with my hands. And it wasn't like flailing or anything, but I just like had this need. So it was a different experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always different. Like I can have one client that will have a lot of movement one time and then be super still the next time, or it's never the same experience because you're never the same person coming back to it, and like everything changes. And like, I find that really interesting about it. And I remember in your session now that you're saying that, and I wouldn't say, I don't know if it was like a disconnection between the head and the heart, but I see this come up a lot. And it's like a very typical of people who are overachievers, people pleasers, say yes to everything, kind of neglect their own needs. And a lot of those people are operating really from the head space more so than from like their gut and their heart, because they sort of shut down their own needs to meet other people's needs. So it's not so much a disconnect. It's like there's a governing that's happening more so in one area than another, and where there's supposed to be like a team kind of approach to it. A lot of people, and like this is so common, like you'll see, because commonly relates to diagnosis of anxiety, depression, those kind of things, or being stuck in your head and like the ruminating thoughts, all of that is, I would say like headspace dominance, or that's what we would call like a process A. So an over mental state. You're always trying to go from the head. And it's almost like when you ask them about their body or take a breath, it's like they can't even like have awareness of like what's happening in their body at all, because everything is just operating from the head space. And that's a very exhausting way to live.
It is.
Yeah.
I know that like ruminating thoughts are the one thing that I've been like working so hard, especially hitting 40s, like a really big change of like what is actually working. And I don't want to feel this. And just really being mindful about that, because it's true. I have a tendency, and of course from past trauma, just to like when emotion gets too high, there's just a lever that just pushes it back down, and then there's nothing. So I can, on the outside, I can still smile and laugh and carry on, continue and be fine. But internally, it's just like I've shut that down completely. So allowing that time and space to just kind of, and listening, if there's like hitting boundaries or things like that. So, but it does take a lot of work, and like stuff like this certainly helps.
Yeah. That's the thing about these modalities is like, people sort of look at them and think like, well, can you fix this and can you do that? And it's like, well, yes and no. Like, it's not me doing anything. It's really like whatever you're able to do. And I can help and facilitate with that. And I'm sure you find the same thing with breath work. It's like you can go and do a breath work session and have a very small response. If you're not willing to look at your own stuff, if you're not willing to have insights and to actually want to develop and look, be introspective and really look at yourself and like where are the areas that are needed for growth. And it's also like looking at the shadow side as well. Like there's a lot of aspects of ourselves that we do not really like to look at and think about or talk about or even like come to terms with. So that's a big side of it as well. It's like, is the person ready and willing and able to do that? And it's almost like the more other practices that they have in place, like I was saying for you, when you're finding this happens with you when big emotions come up and you feel that shut down, that's just like, you're outside of your window of what you can tolerate. But we know that over time we can build a bigger window. We can have a bigger resilience, a bigger scale of like what we can handle at any given time. And that's going to change like throughout your cycle. It's going to change throughout the day. It's going to change depending on what's going on with your kids, with your partner, how tired you are, what else is going on. So you have to be really aware and really take responsibility for yourself to not get pushed outside of that. And then if you do, have strategies and tools to be able to bring yourself back. And these modalities like breath work, all of these things, just general care, taking care of yourself, sleep, exercise, what you're eating, who are you hanging out with, like all of these things are so important. And it's not just like a one thing that's going to fix you. It's like they're all tools that are meant to work together, over time to build. Like you wouldn't want to go to a practitioner who was like, well, I can just unload all your trauma at once. Like you would not be able to handle that. You would not be able to integrate the new you that's then going in to like meet these new experiences. Because when you're doing this type of work, it doesn't mean that your life becomes perfect and easy, but it does mean that it becomes more manageable and like your window of tolerance can become wider and you have a much better awareness of what you need to do to bring yourself back when you do get bumped out. I always say I'm in or I'm out of alignment, and I just know I'm off and like, okay, it's time to like step back. Do I need a bath? Do I need to run? Do what I need? I need to let my family know. So like, it's about like teaching people like the language of what's going on with you as well. And if you're a person who has experienced trauma and maybe even has a diagnosis of one of the trauma disorders, you have to like, this is like a big part of it is like, we have to advocate for ourselves and let people know what's going on with you and not keep doing the same patterns of just shutting it down and pretending like you're fine and still doing all the things and looking fine. But you have to really be able to, have good language around that so that you can have support for yourself. And that can't all come from you. And as us like type A people who are like, oh, the overachievers, we're like, well, we can just manage it all ourselves. But I have found that over the last couple of years that for me, it's really been the people around me that I'm surrounding myself with that have made the biggest changes where I can really actually be myself and not be perfect. And that's helped me heal like the most, I think.
I think that's beautiful and well said. It's so true. Learning to ask for help, learning to communicate that and tearing down that kind of pedestal of this idea of like how you have to be in the world. I think that's the biggest struggle for a lot of us, really, this expectation, especially with the fast-paced world of like social media and just everything where all these lives are perfect. There's just so much to live up to when you measure the success, right? So on top of trauma and on top of all of that, it can be just a shitstorm, lack of a better way to say that.
Well, and that's the thing. You can look at social media or even just looking at people's lives from the outside, and it always looks like people look pretty put together and all of that. And then we talked about this the last time too. And it's like, yeah, but just have a conversation with anyone. Everyone is struggling. Like maybe I'm just in the wrong crowds, but like, I don't know where these people are who are just getting along fine and they're not sort of overwhelmed and really kind of like a couple of crises away from really losing it, or, if it's not their mental health, it's their physical health. It's like, you don't have to look too far into the literature to see like the epidemics that are going on right now. And it's becoming like more and more prevalent in children as well. And so, that's a big part of my practice. And because I have such a history in working with children in the pediatric population, and really that's where my heart is. So it was a bit of a stretch for me doing this modality. Like I do work with children a little bit, but mostly when there's children that are needing some help with, whatever neurodivergent diagnosis they might have. I often say, well, like we have to look at the family, we have to look at the parents, because if you can't sort of hold space for your child, or if your child is really reacting to what your energy is kind of portraying or allowing them to do, then there's no point of like treating the child and then putting them back in an environment where they kind of can't find their fitting, they can't find their grounding, you know, and they can't connect appropriately with their caregivers. So most of my work now is like with the parents, with the adults kind of thing. So kind of looking at least I get my kids at jiu-jitsu that I get to teach and help, and we have lots of great conversations, and get to see them develop resilience in that way on the physical side. And but you develop really strong relationships with the kids that you teach. What we do, at least at our gym, and it's funny the things they come to you with, and just watching them grow and have pride in themselves. So it's been really cool that way.
That's awesome. That's really cool. How are you finding the transition with like working with the parents and stuff? Like, has it been like hills
Really
to climb or?
Yeah. I know I have one client I have that's had quite a few sessions. Like they have a lot of struggles with their daughter having really big emotions, you know, some sort of defiance kind of behaviors coming through. And what I can kind of see, like with a lot of children that I see currently, is like where the child is sort of in charge and they have control, a lot of control in the household. And if you have parents specifically that are very much like have a pattern of like people pleasing, not wanting to hurt anything, trying to provide a perfect experience for their children, do everything, but there's not really a real connection because everyone's so burnt out that they can't really connect on or slow down enough to actually connect with the child. So we're seeing that a lot. So like when you're working with the parent and they're able to like have a bigger window of tolerance, they're able to kind of hold more space, and also like understand their own childhood wounds and why they're behaving the way that they are. I find that they have a lot more compassion and understanding for the child, and it's not just doesn't become about like, oh, the behaviors that they're doing or not doing. It becomes like, oh, this is what it is, this is how it's displaying, but it's like, you know, that's kind of the difference with it. So I find that when you help people to shift their sort of frequency or their energy and let go of a lot of these like lower vibrational traumas that people can be carrying, kids are remarkable at healing, and they will just they just catch right up to their parents right away, I find. So it's like you don't really have to work with the children. In some cases, it's helpful for them, and obviously teaching them strategies for when they do get overwhelmed or they do get into a parasympathetic or a sympathetic state, and they're needing strategies to kind of get themselves back in, or like as a family as a whole. But mostly, I find if you set the environment for the child by helping the parents, then they'll just catch right up.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's fair. I think about sometimes in the busy parts of like everything's got to get done, and the times when my kids act up, and then the times when we're like totally
Always
driving together, right?
Yeah.
Total chaos. And then the times where I'm like, hey, let's do this, and very much there present, and just the difference in their behaviors.
Yeah. I had that experience this evening. Actually, I was recording something for the open mat and trying to make dinner. The dishwasher needed to be empty. I had two kids helping with dinner and dishwasher, and usually like noise is really overstimulating to me. And I kind of like had a second, and I was just also trying to kind of get everything finished so that we could have our time and things like that. And I was like, you know, a couple of years ago, this would have been a very overwhelming situation for me. Not that I would have been losing it or anything, but internally I would have been very stressed, very anxious. But like now I can really handle like a lot more of those normal things and still be able to respond to the children appropriately, and like feel compassion and not feel like just like, oh, like get everything done and cleaned up and put back and like get the work done. It's a lot different experience now when you have more space within your nervous system to actually like handle those ebbs and flows of like a normal day.
Yeah. I find too, like just me, but because Chris and I will laugh because he'll like do a lot of stuff for the kids, whereas I'm just like, hey Sterling, can you help your brother out? Hey, I need your help, and like engage him in like in whatever it is I'm doing, whatever it is I need him to help me with, so that I feel like, okay, I'm allowed to ask this. He's allowed to say no, and you know, but like for the most part, he likes to feel useful, and he might kind of hum and haw, but then it's like, okay, I can manage more things because I'm not running and trying to do it all for everybody.
Yeah, so it's really great for kids to have a lot of responsibilities. I've always parented in that way, where if you're capable, you do that for yourself, you know, not without support or anything like that. But you're not meant to be like a maid or a, you know, a servant to your child. Like, that's not how it's supposed to work. And not that your child's supposed to be a servant to you either. Like, yes, it is not a reciprocal relationship in a sense that your child doesn't owe you anything. And it is your responsibility to care for your child and teach them and help them and nurture them to grow. But that doesn't mean you do everything for them, because that's not teaching them anything. So I'm a big believer in that the more as they accomplish tasks on their own and they have pride in themselves, like, that is a huge way for them to build their self-esteem and to build more resilience and to allow them to also experience challenges. I think that's a big area where a lot of parents don't allow their children to struggle at all, or deal with any amount of discomfort, and then establish problem solving skills to bring themselves back, to work themselves through the problem with adequate support. But I find that that's something that I've noticed a lot, that children are not allowed or let to feel any discomfort or challenge without things being done for them. So I find that too, where it's like, and then when they become adults, it's like, how do you expect them to go out into the world and be able to problem solve, take care of themselves, and manage relationships, all of these things, if they've never really had to? So there's a reason that the developmental milestones are supposed to be met at certain times. And you can see, I'm sure you guys know a lot of adults who you're like, wow, when that happened, you really behaved like a 4-year-old. And it's because they haven't had the opportunities to meet their developmental milestones appropriately. So you'll see a lot of adults, and a lot of adults that are doing like healing work, is a lot of it is there's parts of them that are actually stuck back at a developmental period where they didn't have adequate support or adequate connection. So we talk about attachment a lot. Secure attachment is so important for development. And a lot of people don't get secure attachment. Like, I don't know, I forget what the percentages are of like the different styles of attachment, but there's something like 30% people develop securely attached and into adulthood. And I'm like, I've never met any of them. Like, I don't know where they are, because everybody that I know is like, no, I'm pretty anxious, I'm pretty avoidant. Like, that's kind of like how I operate. But apparently there are people out there who are fairly secure and can manage themselves quite well. But I think less and less, maybe, as things have changed, like, over the generations, and we've lost a lot of that, just like connection and just care, nurturing time with your adults in your life, where the person, your caregiver, is actually able to connect, where they're not so overwhelmed and so stressed themselves that they can't connect with you. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of the mental health challenges that we see today. I think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, no, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. I've just switched over to facilitating with the youth, and it's just like they can't live off their phones. They like you said, the discomfort, just inability to. They're constantly anxious. They can't have conversations eye to eye. Like, it's a huge dilemma. And I'm teaching them like project-based learning, so it's like, we very much have to be engaged and working in groups and talking and feedback. And it's like, I'm like standing up there and like 8 people are on their phones, and or they're just staring at me. Like,
yeah, but I think what's happening is like the phones actually become like a surrogate attachment figure. And so when they don't have them, they honestly do feel very insecure and very overwhelmed and very like they don't know what to do. And like it's awful, and it's only going to get worse. And you see like younger and younger children that can't go to a restaurant or order a meal or do anything without like having a device or having, or just, I mean, I don't know what their amounts of average screen time that children are exposed to now, but I know just from seeing and observing that it's really high. And a lot of people, like, it's like you don't take it away from them. It's like taking away drugs, like a drug. It's like the behaviors, and it's like that is a very, very dangerous and not a healthy way to develop, I don't think. I mean, yeah, there's a place for screens, but it's the way it is now, and with that, and also the parents are very detached as well, and a lot of times addicted to their screens. So it's like the child has nobody to attach and to learn how to kind of regulate and how to do these things without being distracted constantly by the phone. So when we talked about you having like that over mental state, there's a lot more of that to come in the generations to come if you're constantly just using the brain is stimulated all the time. And we very much avoid the rest of the centers where you're supposed to feel from the gut, the heart, like having everything work together. Like, I go back to that movie, Wall-E with the little robot. Did you guys see that? Do you remember that movie?
love that movie.
It's so good. And it's like, I remember watching it, and I don't know how many years ago it was that came out, but it ended up there was nobody left on Earth. It was all just like garbage and trash here, and the little robots were cleaning it all up. But everyone lived on this like spaceship thing, and they just sat in these big chairs, and this like tube came with whatever food they wanted, and they were just like these blobs of flesh that kind of were there, and it was like the only thing that worked was their brain. And I was like, this is actually happening. Like, it's very scary. I mean, not everybody, and obviously there's a lot of people that are trying to get reconnected, trying to like live within their full being and not just operate from the brain kind of thing. So, but yeah, it's it's very scary.
It totally is. And I
Yeah.
think that between like the work that you do and the work that you do and recognizing the need for that space and to get out there, and I love that you're integrating a lot of the youth and the young ones like
Yeah.
in your club, and it's very much community based, and like what's the need for like the women and the men and the youth and the
Mm-hmm.
children, like, and each kind of like, it's not all just like one answer for everything, so which I
Exactly.
think is
Yeah.
amazing. And same for you, like just the different ways that you do the breath work and the different offerings and stuff, just like to meeting people where they are and just trying to like build that base so there are
Exactly.
options.
Yeah. I find that really interesting with our children that just start with jujitsu, and a lot of them are the typical sort of athletic child. And so a lot of the kids that come and they start, you're trying to teach them some of the fundamental movements in jiu-jitsu, like shrimping, for instance, is a very complex movement. It looks so easy when you're just watching it, but then when you actually try to make your body do that, there's a lot of like left right brain coordination that happens in jiu-jitsu, or upper and lower body doing different things at the same time. So it's actually like a lot of neuro development that happens through jiu-jitsu and learning new activities. But I find jiu-jitsu specifically really beneficial for that sense, because it's so technical of a sport, and you have to use your body in so many different ways that are not like usual. So it's probably the most rewarding part of my job as a jiu-jitsu instructor is when the kids come to training, they get on the mats, they're all excited to run around and play, and then when we try to get them to do some of these fundamental movements, they literally can't. Like, there's no connections made within their body to fire the muscles to actually do that movement, and they're kind of looking at you like, I know what you're saying, but like I can't do it. I mean, adults do that too, but the kids are a little bit more accepting of it. And I didn't want to call you out, Tom. I remember you talking about your
Totally
stripping
okay.
experience, but yeah, and everybody I think that does jiu-jitsu can relate to like, yeah, my body just like wouldn't do what they're doing, like I don't know how, because it actually needs to, new neural pathways actually have to be developed when there's these new movements and connections. So seeing the children come and not be able to fire one muscle in their leg to move and to do a shrimp, and then within like, another week or two, you'll see like little movements, and they're like, okay, now they can get on their side and they can get on their other side. And it's like, you're literally watching their brains develop in front of you, in a short amount of time. And it's like, okay, the implications for that for their lifetime is huge. So yeah, we're just teaching jujitsu, but like it's so much bigger than that. And watching a child, like I had a message from one of the moms. I was helping one of the little girls. She's doing her first competition next week, and her and her brother train together, and they're like, star students. They never miss a class. They try very hard. They practice at home. They read about jujitsu. They absolutely love it. But the little girl was having a really hard time escaping from bottom mount, specifically when it was her brother that was on top mount. And of course, the frustration level goes up a little bit when it's a sibling match. We see that all the time in jiu-jitsu. But I was helping her work through, and I was like, okay, like let's get into the situation and see what we're dealing with here. And I was like, yes, your brother has a very good mount. He has very good control, and everyone's going to feel a little bit different. But this little girl, like, she didn't really get that frustrated or upset with any other times, but in this specific time. And then she was in the position, and I was like, okay, I see what's happening. And I was like, we worked through, and I was like, we need a couple of frames here. You need to move in this way. And also you just need to be able to breathe. So if you can get yourself in a position where you can make a little bit of space and take a breath, and then there's a decision to be made there. Am I okay? Can I continue? Or am I tapping? Because I'm not, like, I can't do this right now. You know what I mean? And give yourself an opportunity to grow more from there. But it's like, you could just see her face kind of go like, oh my gosh, like I have the control here. So like that's a huge lesson to learn as like a 10-year-old child, especially as a little girl, to say like, I can, if I'm not okay with the situation, like I don't have to be here. And like giving her the language around that. And also there's the control that if you can make enough space, you can take a breath, and then you can settle yourself down and then decide from there. And usually it's going to be like, yeah, no, I'm good to go. because I have the tool now, right? So, and then anyway, her mom sent me a message afterwards and was just like, thank you so much. It was so hard for me to see her struggling in this area, and I didn't have the tools to tell her like what to do. And like, just knowing how that's going to impact her life and the way that she problem solves and looks at things and is able to be empowered and not be like, well, just try harder. Like, that's not what it was about. You know, it was almost like she was trying too hard. So it's really interesting. Like, there's just like so many incredible lessons that come through jiu-jitsu for children and for adults as well. And that's why I love having this like in-depth understanding of the nervous system, of like emotions and of, you know, coping patterns and that, because so much of it applies. And I find that when I'm teaching, I'm always having to, or I'm very aware of like learning styles. And I feel like I have a very good radar for when people get overwhelmed. So, you know, some people are able to have coaching while they're rolling. Other people don't bother because they're just so overstimulated. You can't kind of like get any more information in. And I find that like my teaching is very individualized to the person, depending on like what they can handle and how they kind of absorb and process information. So that's what I find one of my skills from being an energy worker, and, you know, understanding those things on a deep level really transfers well over to learning. And I mean, I'm not the best jiu-jitsu teacher for everybody, for sure, but for people that kind of struggle and maybe are a bit neurodivergent, or, you know, have some anxiety, have had some past trauma, like that's, I kind of feel like is my wheelhouse.
Hmm. That sounds game changing for youth, right? Like for
Yes.
young people.
Yeah.
Like
It really,
a
really
way
is.
to literally transform themselves getting into their body, and it doesn't have to be through, you know, education and school and all that stuff, but just to actually grow into that more resilient young being. And the
Mm-hmm.
way, and I love the way you talk about it, um, because I know sometimes when I think of jiu-jitsu, it kind of freaks me out because of the intensity that comes with it, and then needing to know certain moves and do things a certain way. But it sounds like you also have this lens of flexibility and meeting these folks exactly like kind of where they're
Exactly.
at. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And with my gym specifically, like our whole focus, our like paradigm that we have there is like, this is like adult play group. So yes, we train very hard. We take it seriously. We, you know, our students that are coming through, like they're adults, you know, they're developing very quickly. And like, you know, maybe I'm yeah, of course I'm biased. Like they're my students, but like I'm like, wow, I'm really surprised at the amount of how much information they're able to absorb and use right away. So it's great to like, yeah, learn a lot of techniques, but if you can't kind of problem solve in real time, like when you're rolling, is it really like useful knowledge? You know what I mean? And like, what are the barriers to that? So we had actually a new student come last night, and a very gifted athlete, but was a very intense person. So a lot of energy, a lot of anxiety. And it was like, and I know that, I can read that. I knew the situation. And it's like, okay, here's kind of the vibe. And I said, like, look around at all of the groups that are rolling. Everybody's smiling. Everyone's sweating buckets and trying to simulate, trying to murder each other, but like everyone's having a good time and it's play. And that's something that I think that is really missing in the adult population, is that there's no more play. And so jujitsu, at least the way we're practicing, is very play based and it's very like fun. And that's what how our the kind of culture of my gym. And I think there's lots of gyms that are like that. And there's lots of instructors. I mean, you still get sort of the other side too, where it's like very competitive focus, or it's intense and it's like, you know, but that's I find what people get really addicted to jujitsu is because of the camaraderie, the sense of community, and that it's like play, and it's something that you don't even realize is missing from your life until you have it. And for a lot of people, like the physical contact is really important as well. And that sounds kind of weird to say, but I know for me, like I spent a lot of years like on my own as a single mom, and jujitsu was like my lifeline. And it was just like you didn't have any contact with people, and then when you go to jujitsu, it's like, oh, you didn't know like that there was a need, even though they're trying to kill you. It was still like a comforting thing to like have those relationships, and you definitely develop like close bonds with people that you train with, because you have to develop trust and you have to have, you know, a really good awareness of like how other people are doing and things like that as well. So yeah.
That's super
Have
awesome.
you tried jujitsu, Alex?
I'm trying to get her. Working on her.
I am really interested. And it was interesting because when I first met you, so it's something that I've wanted to do for a number of reasons. More to like challenge myself, kind of use energy in a different way.
Yeah.
and, you know, meet different parts of myself.
Yeah.
But so one question I've been having, and I was thinking about, I wanted to ask you, was actually around, so when we had first met, like my energy was like sapped. Perimenopause was like beating me up like hardcore. It still is, but
I joined you a year later.
slowly navigating it. And I had like absolutely no energy, and I've kind of shifted some things a little bit that's able to move through. Because when I think of the amount of energy you have to exert, I'm like, I have very little energy already. I don't want to have to like be trying to, you know, fight for my life in this way when I feel like I'm fighting for my life in other ways.
I get you totally, but it's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was really, and I mean, I'm not saying like overtrain and do all these things, but whenever my life was at the most stressful, if I didn't have jiu-jitsu, I literally wouldn't have made it, at least not the way I did, you know. It was an outlet, and yes, and like people would ask me like, why do you train so much? Like you work over full time, you're a single mom, you're doing all of these things. I was competing and doing all this, and I was like if I couldn't do jiu-jitsu through that like very difficult like years of my life, like I just don't, it was kind of like the glue that was holding everything together. So it's like the sense of community, the relationships from there, the support, the ability, like when you're doing jiu-jitsu, you're not doing anything else. So I was like a hyper vigilant overachiever, doing 100 things at the same time except at jiu-jitsu. So it was actually like rest for me, which sounds really wild, but it is like your physical body's doing a lot of work, but it's like a meditation. So it actually gives you a lot of energy. Yes, you're going to be physically tired and you're going to feel a little bit sore. Like all of those things are true, but I think overall it's like a net positive as far as energy. So if that's the thing that's holding you back, I would say just try it, like not one time, but like to see, because it's definitely something that gives way more than it takes. Similar to breath work, similar to yoga, all of like exercise in general. Like a lot of people say that I'm too tired to exercise. I'm like, well, that's why you need to, because it's really hard to get past that brain kind of like barrier that you have, that like I don't have the energy. If I do that, I'm going to feel even worse. But it's actually the opposite. Yes, in the moment you're creating your own struggle, and then it's kind of like you've lightened your load for the rest of the day. Like the difference between people walking into a jiu-jitsu class, like if you could measure their level of stress or their level of tension that's held within their body, to where they're sitting on the mats chatting with their buddies afterwards or joking around or whatever, watching rounds, whatever it might be, they're completely different when they leave there. Like it's such a release of tension, a release of stress, that's like everything is like okay. Like, you know, you don't have to be perfect. It's like it's play, but it's, you know, and I think that's something that's missing when we talk about children as well. It's like really missing from children's lives. Like when I'm teaching class and I'll say, okay, we're doing line drills, like everybody do cartwheels down the mat, and like half the kids look at you like, what's a cartwheel? And I'm like, what do you mean what's a cartwheel? Like you don't play, like you don't, like I don't remember ever learning that. It just was like something that you could do, or you could do a somersault, or you could, you know, we were allowed, like I grew up, you know, with 4 siblings, there was 5 of us, and we like had play fights all the time. Like that's how we played. Our dad played with us. We played bull riding. Like we played like very physical kind of games, and like we loved that. Yeah, there were a few bloody noses and things like that, but like it was so fun. And like we all of my siblings, and like I find that's the commonality of people that were raised in that way, where they use their bodies very physically. We worked on a farm, we did all kinds of things, we helped at the house. We all have bodies that work very well as adults, and as you know, getting into like perimenopause and all of that as well. It's like I think the kids that are not doing any of these physical activities, is like, how are we expecting their bodies to perform into adulthood when they can't even do, you know, these simple movements? So it's like it's really important. And as well as like that whole hands-off policy that kind of came in, where kids weren't allowed to like touch each other anymore. Like look at every other animal species, all of the baby animals, the young animals like play fight. So it's like very much a part. And it's not like, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about jiu-jitsu, is that it's violent and that it's intense and that there's like any negative emotions there. Like it's not really, well, at least not if you're in the right gym or the right kind of like culture for you. It's a very supportive and fun environment. Otherwise, like people wouldn't be doing this all the time, you know, all different types of people. Like you have every walk of life kind of in the gym. So I think that's something that's missing. And like for our kids that come and train, that the 15 minutes between classes or before they get there, when they're ready and they're just playing with each other on the mat and it's not structured, like that's been something that's been blowing my mind lately. Like I have a picture on my phone actually from the other night, where they have all of these they'll sort of modify some of the games and some of the techniques that we do in class, and they're making their own games and they're setting it up, and there's like leaders within the group that are kind of doing it, and then they're moderating each other and like, don't kick the ball too high or she's going to take it off us. So like, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's so cool to see them developing their little pack and their little community, and there's like rules within that and how it all works. And like, I just love it. Like, you know what I mean? And so we let them play a lot in that way, but that's what they're wired to do. And if they're not getting that, then it's like, what are we wiring them for?
Yeah. No, it's totally fair. And it's funny too, because at my club, the same thing. There's like a whole rack of like yoga balls and
Yeah.
gloves and whatever. And they just start like flipping out all over the mats and like pulling things. And a couple of people are playing one game, a couple are playing another game. And it's just like,
Yeah.
they're just loving it. And actually it's funny because going back to like the tiredness and talking from an A-type personality, like I needed that perfect opportunity to go to the gym, to go to the club, to work out, and realized I'm never going to get there. So we started bringing our kids. Like we bring Sterling for his class, but we just realized we're just going to bring them if the club's okay with the kids kind of running around every so often, try to, have them off to the side. But they're seeing it. And then the other night, what was so cool was we had crash mats down and a little barrier for like Theo and Sterling, and we were rolling, and then I kind of looked over and like Sterling was trying stuff that we were doing, and like they were laughing and carrying on, but it was just like awesome. That's really cool because they're seeing it. I'm like, okay, this is the perfect like situation to do it. Not kids have to be home, I have to be like energy ready to go, like everything has to be, stars have to align for me to go to class kind of thing. And that was letting go of that too, because I think probably a lot of people out there also wait for this perfect, like I'm motivated today, my gym, like everything's ready to go, and then if it's not, they're like, oh, I'll go another time.
Yeah, I find that too. Like a lot of people, they say, well, I want to start, but I'm not in shape, and I'm going to get in shape and then I'm going to start. I'm like, no, just start, like just come, because there's nothing going to get you in shape faster than actually rolling and doing jiu-jitsu. And I find that's the same thing like with energy work, or people that are looking at some of these modalities where you're actually really going to be changing and evolving as a person, like at a more, a sped up rate than you would kind of just naturally if you're not willing to kind of like do that kind of work and look into it. But it's like people don't want to come until they're like in a better place. And it's like, no, that's when you come. You know what I mean? Like come when you're, feeling super depressed, or you're, overwhelmed, anxious, exhausted, all of these things. Like that's when you need to go and like really advocate for yourself and find the modalities, find things that work for you. And even if it's within a modality, find a practitioner that works well for you. Like everyone's not geared and wired to match up really and connect with everybody, but find someone that sort of you align with, and like look into them, ask questions. Like you can ask people questions about what they're doing, and if it doesn't jive with you, like your body has a pretty good sense of like who you're going to be able to connect with and who's going to be able to help your kind of sense. Like I'm not for everybody, I'm sure Alex, you find that as well. It's like, but find something. you know if it's not breath work or yoga or meditation or Reiki or like any of it, art, like there's so many things that you can do to help to, gain some insight into why you are the way you are, and can you do anything about it. So just having that sense of control and empowerment over your own life, and not just be like, well, I have anxiety. It's like, well, no, you don't have anxiety. You are anxious because, and that can be dialed back. That can be treated. It's not like I have it. It's not like you get like an ingrown toenail. Like it's not the same thing. It's something that has happened to you. It's a pattern that's developed over time, and it can be changed. And I think a lot of people just accept they feel like shit. And it's like, it's just well, I'm a mom, or I'm this, or I'm doing all these things. So of course I feel like shit. And it's like, well, no, I wasn't willing to just keep going in that route. So yeah, I had to make some really drastic changes in my life also. And that was all my decision to do. But I didn't want to just keep going like down this path of like despair, anymore. So you really have to, if you want big changes, you have to make some big changes. So I find that. Do you find, Alex, with your people that you work with, that a lot of things change within their lives as they're doing breath work or working through some of their emotional trauma or things that they've been holding on to?
Yeah, when they get a chance to tap into whether it's their like emotional parts that they've been kind of putting aside or not fully accessing, allowing themselves to kind of then maybe feel things, but also allow insight to rise, and just like the pieces kind of get put together, and it's like, oh, this is what this is. So the more insight arises, the more like
That's where
the scary
transformation
thing is, because then you have to make change. Once you know, it's like you got to do something different, because you're like, oh wow, now I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to step. So yeah.
Exactly. It just makes things a lot more clear. Yeah.
Definitely.
I also like in your practice, Alex usually has journaling. So there's a part like kind of afterwards. And I think of like the sessions that we did, I really appreciate it because there was a lot of stuff rolling around in my head. And I wanted to capture some of that stuff for kind of like for later. So after we get up and kind of come to and get back into our bodies and have that moment to kind of where we're at, I really appreciate that. Because again, that's that awareness of your body, awareness of like, you know, what you need, what you were thinking. And then because I'm a action planner, so it was kind of like, here's where I was at and I could take away.
Yeah, you should watch her journal sometimes. It's like it just starts like going down in like this train of like like a plan is evolving or something, or like everything is connecting these dots. I'm like, oh, very organized.
She's very organized, yeah.
Or that meme with like the really crazy chart where the guy's like this and there's lines everywhere. Yeah. I'll have some of those sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Did you find a big difference, Jill, with your in-person session with spinal energetics as opposed to the online session that we did?
I was actually really surprised because, again, this was such a new bridge for me, like kind of like my own biases on like things in life and just kind of like the different modes of like therapies and that. So I was just like, oh no, because it's funny.
Oh, no.
Usually me, I'm always worried that I'm not doing it right. So that's like every practitioner I've been with, it's like they have to tell me there's like no wrong way to do this.
Yeah.
But that's always the first thing in my head, like I'm not going to be able to do this. But no, I felt just as connected. So I was actually very surprised because, again, you know, like the energy of being around someone. But yeah, I felt connected to it. I had a lot come up after the fact and sat with me and like continue to now. Like I go back to the first and the second session. Like it's just like echoes of, because I remember you saying, and I'm sorry, I know I can't like quote verbatim, but like I remember you saying, you know, bringing awareness to something and then it's your ability to recognize it and then make the shift.
That's where transformation happens, is you have to have the insight. You have to be able to see it and understand it for it to shift, for it to transform. And that's exactly what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found that, you know, both with breathwork, both with the spinal energetics, is just like these points where I can rail against or go back to what I was doing before, or I can take these opportunities to be like, no, everything that I've been absorbing and taking in, like I can actually hold space. I can actually shift gears. I can actually just sit with it. Like you were talking earlier about people's inability to be in discomfort. I ran from discomfort my whole life because in the past there was just so much of it. And I'm like, I never want to feel bad again. And like, that's how a lot of people run. And it's like, no, I can feel sad about nothing, or I can feel sad about an event and I can mourn and I can just be numb and I can be angry but I can also not spiral out of control with those emotions that my life is going to end and I can't move forward. And I think just there was that fear, like starting with you, like there was that fear that I always have that if I break that barrier, that's it, I'm toast, I'm done, I'm spiraling, like I'm out. Because you see other people in these hyper like anxious and just, you know what I mean? So I worried, I'm like, oh my God, that's going to be me. I'm going to be not able to do my job, not able to be a mom. Like, so knowing now, like with these practices and jiu-jitsu and just like the challenges, and I hold all of what I've been absorbing from each and every one of you and being like, yes, life can be better. Like you have your ups and downs, but
of course it's not supposed to be perfect and happy and easy all the time. That's a myth. And that's something I think perpetrated by our culture too, is that it's like this perfectionism and this like with social media too, you think that everyone's lives are perfect and they're absolutely not. Like no one is, unless they're numbing or they're whatever. but everyone is experiencing the same highs and lows as everybody else. And I think like the thing that I find with you, Jill, over the time that we've been working together is like the amount of compassion that you're able to have hold for yourself. And that's something that comes with the insight from it, is that like it's not about, okay, I keep doing this and I'm getting anxious, so like now I'm mad at myself because I'm getting anxious. And it's like, no, dude, like let's look at the reasons why you developed those patterns in the first place. And let's go back to that however old person was that developed these patterns in the beginning, that had absolutely no control over their environment or the behaviors, anything that they were doing. And those things developed. And like, let's have a little bit of compassion for her, and that's really where the space is held, where shifts can happen. And that was something I was like really, really struggled with myself. I had no compassion for myself. It was just like, try harder, work harder, go further, do more, go, 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 go. And it's like, I didn't ever give myself permission to be weak, to be vulnerable, and I'm still working on these things, obviously, but I think what's come the greatest gift for me has been that self-compassion that I've developed for myself, and seeing that I'm able to kind of help facilitate that for other people, that they can look at themselves and not just judge themselves so harshly, because it's like you're being hard on yourself if you're depressed or you're anxious or whatever. It's like, no, that's a symptom of like what's happened, and how you didn't have the correct security or attachment or co-regulation to be able to get yourself through it and get back on track. And there's so many people that are just sort of out there like trying their best, but it's like it's very, very difficult. So it's not like a quick fix. It's not a fix all, save your life kind of thing, but it also is. But it's just like there's so many factors to it, and you have to, the more you do, the more you can do. So the more things that you start to line up, these practices that get into place, it's like being like genuine and real about like what actually is going on, why am I doing it? Okay, I kind of see, and like taking away a lot of that like self-blame that comes along with trauma a lot, I find is like such a huge factor that really helps people to shift and go back to who they actually were meant to be before whatever happened. I've been working with my daughter quite extensively over the last like year with spinal energetic sessions. She developed juvenile arthritis when she was like about 14. She had a terrible case. It was like every joint and tendon in her body. She had, was really, really suffering from a physical illness, which then merged into like, like a pain disorder, and then merged into a very significant mental health diagnosis. And it was like, holy shit, and it's like, hey, this is a kid who, when she was 3 and 4, like she was like the happiest, most bubbly, most well-behaved, connected, loving child ever. And like all of these things can happen into like a pretty normal family, or when you do have some support. But it's like, if you have a child that experiences adverse childhood events, most of which are out of your control, like these things can happen to anybody. And if we don't talk about the tools and the ways to actually find their way back and to keep them alive and to keep like to reconnect them and help them to rewire, it's like looking at that through pharmaceuticals and through like the traditional medical system, it's very scary, and it's a very, very dark road that we've traveled and are still traveling. But without these other modalities, like I honestly do not know where we would be. So it's like, if you can't pair the two together, there's a time and place for that for sure. But it's not the be all end all. Like that's what I would like people to, if they get anything out of this, is like, this can be something that can be like an adjuvant and like an assistance to whatever other services you're doing. If people come to me and they have a complex trauma history, or they have a significant diagnosis of mental health, like the first thing I want to know is like, who's your team? What's your practice already? Who are your supports? What's going on? Because I'm not getting in there and letting your, just starting to crack things open without you having the proper supports in place, because that is like such an integral part of healing, is having proper supports and understanding and the ability to integrate the new shifts that are happening for you. So there's no point in like, doing a whole bunch of like work on somebody and then them not being able to integrate it all. They're just going to go back and almost might make it worse if they don't have the stability within their system to handle the emotions that are kind of coming up. So, I mean, it definitely has to be a better partnership between sort of the two realms. And I think we're starting to see that more. Like, I know I have a client that sees me that has chronic pain syndrome. and she was talking to like her pain team, her neurologist about what I was doing. And he was actually really interested. She's like, yeah, I thought he was just gonna like shut me down, but he was actually really interested. Like, can I bring him one of your cards? And I was like, absolutely. Like, I'm more than willing to talk to anybody about it. There's not as much like ability because of how new these sort of modalities are, especially in the West, that we don't, it's not that the science isn't there, but it's just like the time hasn't passed with all the studies. And it's something that is very difficult to study as well. It's not that tangible. But it's coming. Like, you're seeing Joe Dispenza do a lot of research around the energy field and how we can actually measure it now. So it'll get there. And I've always been a person who is a bit like odd or whatever you want to call it, but like sort of getting involved in these things before they become mainstream, and then having a pretty good understanding of it by the time like a lot of people kind of catch up and it becomes something that people are sort of talking about. But I know, like, 5 years ago, if I watched a video of spinal energetics on Instagram, I would have been like, what the hell? Even though I had a lot of background in it. So it's becoming, and it's like people that are brave and sort of sharing their stories and about what's helping, what's working for them, that are helping some of these modalities to become recognized as a really beneficial tool for healing.
Yeah. And I think too, like, for both of your experience and what you've worked through and what you've searched for and what you see out in the world, you know, giving people permission, because a lot of us have these, again, those expectations and like that support, like, you can feel this, it's okay, you can hold space for yourself, and just like maybe going back to childhood where you didn't get that, and having, you as a practitioner say like, it's okay. And then it's not about falling apart, it's about being able to now be, like you said, resilient and stronger because of it, because that's just that next notch of health, overall health, where you can take control of your life. So I think it's really awesome that, for the two of you, and I'm so grateful to have met both of you and experienced the therapies, and very much a supporter of it, because it didn't take me down. I had emotional times, but it actually built me up, and now I can ride the waves different and just continue on that path. And if, you hit a bump in the road, it's like going back to it and knowing you're not just going to fall apart, you're actually going to be stronger.
Yeah.
Kind of breaking those biases.
Sorry, a lot of things that you've experienced, so like these patterns, these tension patterns that get stored within the body, often did happen or start in childhood. And now you're an adult, you have developed all of these things, you've learned things, you have different practices that are helpful, but it's like we don't ever slow down enough to take the time to go back then and be like, now I have the skills to handle that. Let's let the body actually work that through now with my new set of skills. And it's almost like reaching back and taking the hand of the child and helping them to come forward and to be more whole. And that's really how I look at the practice of it. I've been reading a lot about internal family systems and things like that, and like that's a lot of the practices of these like fragments of yourself that weren't able to kind of develop any further because of whatever roadblock you hit, which is whatever it was outside of your window of what you could handle. You didn't have the proper support. But if you allow yourself the time, and of course there's a lot of fear around facing these things, and to feeling those emotions like you expressed yourself, Jill, of having this fear of like what's going to happen if I'm out of control, because we've learned to control our environment, try to control everything, which is really not real. We can't control it. So it's like that ability to bring those fragmented parts of yourself forward towards your current self and just becoming a more whole person. It's just like, it's really hard to explain what that feels like, to have missing pieces that come back to you and be like, oh yeah, like that's me, is like a really cool feeling. Hard to describe, but that's kind of what we do, right, Alex? Would you say?
That sounded perfect. That was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming back to these pieces. Being able to hold them again.
Yeah. Absolutely. Dust them off. Yeah. And always a work in progress. I mean, that's another big point of it too. It's like never, there's like not this like, okay, am I fixed now? It's like, no, it's like, it's always an evolution of your soul, right? So you come here with a certain dogma, like your purpose to come, and like what are you here to learn. And it's like you can keep running and trying to avoid or doing all of the things, or just being shut down or trying to like work your way through everything. But if you're not ever actually willing to sit with yourself and figure out like, what am I doing here? What am I supposed to be doing? What do I want? And not just following like kind of the norms or the expectations of whoever we think is really, I think, the whole point. So I think a lot of the energy modalities, what we've talked about, are really enabling people to really get back to like, wait, what do I actually want? Who am I? Why am I doing what I'm doing or reacting the way I am? And why do I feel so unfulfilled and like lost? And so it might be hard to find and to go back and to kind of collect those pieces of yourself and bring it forward. But it's also like the most rewarding thing that I've experienced. So hard doesn't mean bad.
But you can tell, like, both of you, like, expanding your practice and where you're integrating into different circles and like the community that you're building, and like you can see it. It's like a true passion, and I think that's amazing.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm so glad we actually got back to the
I know, yeah.
to this topic.
Yeah, you see what happens when you get me talking about jiu-jitsu.
I know, I love it. It's so good, and like, you know, it's one of my favorite episodes. Just like it was, go back to it. I'm like, you're so well spoken, and you're so passionate, and so valid in the points that, you know, that like what you see, and like the truth of like seeing people's energy and seeing like what the need is, and just like all the soul searching you've done for yourself to be able to show up how you are today. And I think that's truly amazing.
Thanks. That's really nice. I wasn't like that a few years ago. I can tell you that. I wouldn't have been able to talk about my situation, about the things that I've experienced in that way, and to have like such peace about it all, and to even to have the courage to make the changes that I've made in my life and do things a little bit differently. It doesn't mean everything runs smoothly and it's all perfect, but it's like, it just feels more right. You know what I mean? And I think it's going to be a struggle either way. So do you want to struggle treading water, or do you want to actually go somewhere? That's kind of the way I look at it. So yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, we'll have to connect, Alex, and do a breathwork session, do a little exchange. Maybe we can set up a group session together that we can facilitate. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. That would be amazing.
I like that.
I'm all for it.
And I'm hoping to see you Saturday.
Oh, awesome. Are you coming over? Yay. Yeah. So good to see you. Alex, you should come.
Right?
I'll see if I can convince her.
Yeah, come on over.
I wouldn't be able to this weekend, but I love the idea of like, I would love to start with women rolling with women. I'd love to. That's where I'd want to start.
Well, we have women at our club. You can just roll with the women. That's cool.
Yes. Yes.
I'll keep working on it.
Good job. Okay, guys. Thanks so much for having me. We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.